Okay, a couple of things to show you guys here. I've got, there's 1,000 videos on YouTube telling you how to connect your solar power system and all that, and that's not what I'm going to cover today. I just wanted to show you how I've got my system set up, the reasons why it's set up the way it is, and the main thing I want to discuss in this video is the differences between a PWM charge controller and an MPPT charge controller, and why you want one over the other and which one works best in which situation. So first off, let me zoom in here. This right here is my, sorry for that, this is my MPPT charge controller. It's got a digital readout on it. It's a cloudy day today, and I'm only getting about 6 amps right now. On a really sunny day, this thing is rated for 25 amps, and I've had it at 25, even 26 amps. So and that's that system. And I have two different controllers, and they're two completely separate systems. If you look down here, I've got zoom back out here. I've got two battery banks. I've got two batteries connected together right here, and then I have a single battery over here for the PWM. And here's my PWM controller. These are all differently, they're not different lights, different controls, depending on the brand you get and all that. But basically on this particular one, and this is a very cheap charge controller. It's 20 amps on 12 volt, 30 amps on 24 volt, and it detects which one you've got automatically. Excuse me. The three lights you see, the light to the far left is state of charge. That light will flash whenever the battery's fully charged. The light to the right, the yellow one, is the load. When that light's on, it means it's powering the load. The differences that I want to discuss about the PWM versus the MPPT. Okay, let's talk about batteries for a second. A battery only charges, doesn't matter how many amps or volts or whatever's coming in. You can have 14 volts coming in, but if your battery is at, say, 11 volts, okay, it's only going to charge at 11 volts. And with a PWM controller, everything above that is just wasted. Okay, if you got 14 volts coming in on a PWM, you're getting, and your battery is at 11 volts, then you've got 11 volts going into the battery, and the 5 volts above that is just wasted. Okay, with a PWM, the MPPT, I'm sorry, what it does is, if your battery's at 11 volts and you've got 14 volts coming in, the PWM, it's shot over here, it will take and adjust the voltage and the amperage. So if your battery is at 11 volts, the MPPT will drop the voltage down to 11 volts, which is what the battery's taking in, but it will up the amperage. So if you've got 14 volts at 5 amps, it will readjust it. It'll drop the voltage from 14 down to the 11 if that's what the battery's at. Whatever the voltage the battery is at, it will drop the voltage down to that level. But it will increase the amperage. And so you're getting a lot more power going into your battery with the MPPT. Whereas the PWM, you lose all that. It doesn't have the ability to increase the amps or decrease the amps or adjust the voltage. It's sending whatever it's got coming in, it's sending that to the battery. But like I said, a battery will only charge at whatever its level is at that moment. If a battery is sitting at 12 volts and you've got 14 coming in, it's only accepting the 12 volts. The other two are just gone. You know, they're not doing anything. They're being wasted, basically. And the amperage remains constant with a PWM. You can't, it doesn't have the ability to adjust things like the MPPT. And I've watched a lot of videos about this, and I understand it. Putting it into words is a little more difficult. But bottom line is, the MPPT is going to give you somewhere around 27-28% more usable power going into your batteries than a PWM will give you, even if they're both, you know, using the same solar panels, the same batteries. If everything's identical, you're still going to get more, almost 30% more power out of the MPPT. Now think about that for a moment in terms of what your solar array is. I have 560 watts of solar panels outside, and that's 560 watts coming in. Now that's between these two systems, but let's just say that 560 watts coming in on just one charge controller. With the PWM, you would have to subtract 30% from that 560 watts basically to give you, you know, that amount of power coming in. Whereas with the MPPT, it's basically harvesting 100% of the power coming in is going to the batteries, whereas only about 70% of the power coming in with the PWM is actually making it into the battery. So that's one thing I wanted to explain to you today, and I wanted to show you, even on a cloudy day like today, I've got 4.7 amps coming in because my batteries are not charged yet. My batteries they're up to 13.4 volts right now. I ran them down. That's another thing I want to discuss. If you're just getting into solar, number one, you really must have a voltmeter. It doesn't matter if it's one that's on the charge controller, like the one I've got here, the one you're looking at, or if you buy an aftermarket voltage meter from an auto parts store. You know, you can get those voltmeters that are made for your car, that, you know, those round meters that people put in their dash. You can get one of those and connect it to your battery, because you really have to know what your volt reading is pretty much at all times. And with the PWM controller I've got over here, it does not have a voltmeter. And I don't have one from the auto parts stores yet, but I do have a multi-tester, you know, that electricians use, and so I can check my voltage on the single battery. And but with the MPPT, it's got the digital meter built in. I can check my volts. I can check my amps that are going into the battery. I can't check what my amps are, you know, how many amps my batteries are holding, but I can check how many amps are going in. That tells me, you know, how well my panels are working at that moment, how much, you know, power I'm getting from them. But getting back to voltage, with a deep cycle battery, you do not want to remove more than 50% of the power that's in those batteries. If you go below 50%, you're doing damage to your batteries. Your batteries are not going to last nearly as long. And I did a lot of research online, and basically with, your voltage is what you have to go by to tell how much power you've taken out of the batteries, how much is remaining in the batteries, and there's two different levels that people look at. There's the 80% rate, which means you've taken 20% out of your batteries. When they get down to 80%, you stop. You shut everything off. You unplug everything, and so the goal with the 80% is you never want to take more than 20% of the power in the batteries out. You want there to always be at least 80% still in the batteries. Now, if you can do that, if you can get by on only using 20% of the power in the battery will have its longest service life. You're talking 8 to 10 years you can get out of your batteries, is as long as you never pull more than 20% out, and you've always got at least 80% in. They'll last, I've had people tell me 10, 12, 15 years, although the 15 is a little hard to believe. But 10 years is not, out of the question. Now, you can take the batteries down to 50%. And if you do that occasionally, it's not going to harm the batteries. If you're doing it every day, then you're going to shorten your battery life considerably. If you're dropping your batteries, taking 50% out on a daily basis, you're looking at maybe only getting a couple, 3 years out of your batteries before they're worn out. So that's something. But getting back to the voltage, how do you know when you're at 20%? How do you know when you've pulled 20% out or 50% out? Well, the way you can tell that, and it's not exact, but it'll give you a good indication, is your voltmeter. At 20% discharge, your voltmeter should read 12.47, somewhere right in there. I don't have the numbers in front of me to tell you what it is for 50% discharge. You'll have to look that up online, because I try to keep mine at 80%. Just the two batteries I've got connected to this MPPT charge controller, those two batteries cost me $322. And so I want to make those batteries last as long as I possibly can. The reason that I have two charge controllers connected, and I've got two batteries connected to one and one battery connected to another, is the single battery is what I had a year ago when I first set this up, and the two other batteries, those are recent. I just got those very recently. Well, if you've got a battery that's a year old or whatever, you don't want to connect it to your new batteries, because the older battery will put a strain on the newer batteries. In fact, the research I've done says that if you've cycled a battery, which means you've taken power out and then charged it back up, that's one cycle. And so you're cycling your batteries on a daily basis. If you pull any power out at all, you're taking some power away at night. The next day the sun comes out, powers the panels put power back into the battery, charges the batteries back up. That's a cycle. And so with new batteries, from what I've read online, is if your old battery has been cycled more than 75 times, which is basically 75 days of use, then you don't want to connect it to a new battery. And with my old battery, it had been cycled 300 times before I got the new battery. So when I got those, I did not want to connect the old battery to the new battery. So what I did was I had a PWM charge controller that I wasn't using, because originally the MPPT was connected to the one battery until I got the other batteries, whatever. So I said, well, you know, I've got this battery, it's the old battery, but it's still good. I don't want to let it go to waste. Batteries are expensive. I want to use as much power as I can. So what I'll do is I'll hook the PWM to the single battery. I'll hook the MPPT to the pair of batteries I've got, and I'll plug in certain things to one system and plug other things into the other systems. Like I said, these are two totally separate systems. They are not connected together at all in any way. The single battery I use for all of my DC gadgets and appliances. I've got cell phones. I've got a cell phone signal booster because the signal's very weak here, so I had to pay $100 for a signal booster. It runs off of DC power. It stays connected to that single battery 24 hours a day. I've also got a satellite radio that I like to listen to, and another radio. Both of those I run off the small battery, the single battery. With my pair of batteries, that's what I plug my inverters into. And if you look, let's see if I can get a picture of it here. Oh, wrong way. Okay, right there. That is a little 50-watt power inverter. And I have many power inverters. I've got 50 watt, I've got 100 watt, 150. I've got two 600 watt inverters. Actually, I've got one mounted here on the wall. That's it right there. That's a 600 watt. And then I have my biggest inverter is a 1000 watt inverter. And you may be wondering, why would someone have a 1000 watt inverter when he's only got 560 watts of solar power? Well, the way it works is the power is stored in the batteries. And when my batteries are fully charged, I can hook up a 1000 watt inverter and run it for, I don't know, an hour before my voltage level gets down too low. And then disconnect it, and my solar panels, because the solar panels are not what powers the inverter, they just charge the batteries. The battery is what provides the power to your inverter. So if I run my 1000 watt inverter for an hour, it drains my batteries, pretty significantly, and I turn it off and let the solar panels charge the batteries back up. And when they get charged back up, I could use the 1000 watt inverter again for an hour if I wanted to. It takes, depending on how much sunlight you've got, it's going to take, if you run a 1000 watt inverter for an hour and you've got 560 watts of solar, it's going to take at least 2 hours for the solar panels to charge the batteries back up from the power that you've taken out. Always try to use the smallest inverter that will meet your needs. I found out that with doing some research and trial and error, I can run my little 50 watt inverter 24 hours a day, and that's a major convenience. I've got a lamp that has an LED bulb in it. It only uses, I think, 8 watts. I can run that lamp all night long. I've got, my laptop is not able to be charged with DC power. It has to plug into AC, so I'll plug my laptop into the inverter at night and charge it up. There's a lot of little gadgets that use AC power that I can run off that 50 watt inverter. I've even got a fan, a decent sized fan that I can run off of that little 50 watt inverter and run it all night long. So in the summertime I can lay in bed with the fan on all night and not be worried about running my batteries down below the 80% mark, taking 20% off the top, because I'm only using a little 50 watt inverter. Now if I was to run my 150 watt inverter, I could not run it all night because it would drain the batteries down below my set point of 12.47 volts. And so if what I try to do is to pretty much limit myself to 50 watts per hour. That's another thing you need to understand about electricity. Everything is measured, whether it's measured in amps or measured in volts or measured in watts, that's all over a period of time. So if you got a 50 watt inverter connected and you're running it, 10 hours, then you've used 500 watts. 50 watts times 10 is 500. So that's an easy way of keeping track of things.